Hello and welcome to the Joe Schmo Show again. I am your host, Joe Pucci, and today I'm going to discuss something a little bit different than what I've been posting about over the last couple of days. Last week I posted a couple of podcasts discussing illegal immigration and politicians' rhetoric around ICE. Today I want to discuss my own policy proposal that I think both sides should be able to come together on and meet the demands both sides may have. But I'm going to finish with a discussion of why I think the left still will not accept this. But it is a genuine proposal. Obviously, the details need to be filled in with more knowledgeable uh, approaches to the issues addressed. Like, for example, numbers can go one way or the other, slide up or down. But let me get into it. So here's my proposal. All illegal immigrants, regardless of how long they've been here, need to register with the DHS through a separate new program. All of them. Okay. No action is taken on them because of their registration, but as a requirement that you register. Okay. Give them, say, 3 to 6 months to do so. I would suggest the lower end of that. It could go up to 6 months, but if you give them too long of a period of time, then it seems less important to do so, and fewer people are going to do it because they can skirt it. All right. Those that do are not subject to immediate deportation unless conditions, which I'll address here in a moment, are met. Those that don't register, regardless of any other factor, are immediately deported. If you do not register through this program and you are discovered, you're out. Plain and simple, no questions asked, you're out. Well, one question is, where's your home country? And then we send you back there. Okay. So you have to register through this program. All right. Now, among those that have registered for this program, I think that any illegal immigrant that has been here, say, less than 5 years, that number could slide, all right, should be removed without consideration of their standing in the community or if they have uh, a criminal record other than being an illegal immigrant. Okay, as I've noted before, crossing the border illegally is a criminal offense. It is not a civil offense. You are culpable for civil penalties for crossing the border illegally, but it is not in lieu of the criminal penalty. Okay, a second offense is a felony, and you are subject to civil penalties if you have an order of removal, final order of removal, and do not comply with that. Just to recap. Okay. Outside of that, if you're here less than 5 years, again, number can slide, and you don't have any of that, you don't have any criminal record or anything of that nature, uh, still you're going to get removed. Right? Illegal migrant children, children that cross the border illegally, okay, uh, should be returned to their family with their family to their country of origin. Okay, that's obvious. I'd also think that if they are born here and thus birthright citizenship at the moment applies to them, I still think they should go with their family back to the parents' country of origin. Why? Because hasn't been one of the issues, maybe disingenuous or not, that the left has brought up is child separations, family separations. Why would we separate a child from their parents, leave the child in this country, send their parents back to their home country, and not keep that family together? Because the parents don't belong here. Obviously, if you're an illegal immigrant, regardless of what your interaction with your community is, no matter how good that might be, you still violated the law. You still cut the line. No, that's disrespectful to the United States. That's because you didn't follow the law. That's disrespectful to legal immigrants that went through a process. And that's disrespectful to American citizens as well. Okay. So, all right. Those that are here longer than 5 years, or whatever that number may be, and have registered with the DHS, and have no other criminal record other than crossing the border illegally, should be placed on a probationary status for some number of years. Let's say 5 years. That number, again, could change. It could be different. It could be, I wouldn't say less than 5 years. It could be longer. Okay. During which any criminal offenses or use of welfare programs would immediately void the agreement this illegal immigrant has with the federal government and subject them to deportation. If during that probationary status they have a job, they're working, they're staying, in good standing with the law, they're not getting in trouble with the law, okay, fine. Then that's generally the kind of person you want to see in this country. All right. The fact that they came across the border illegally and violated our laws to begin with is an issue, though. Okay. As a result, all of this being considered, now up to this point, this looks like amnesty, right? Don't worry, it's not full amnesty. This is the crux of my policy proposal, and this is why I think the left would completely say no to this. Even if you meet all of that, even if you go through the probationary period and you're afforded legal permanent residency, you have no pathway to citizenship at all. The only way you can get citizenship is by returning to your home country and then applying to come into the United States, going through the process that every legal immigrant goes through. That is the only way anyone should ever get citizenship from outside this country. Along with the no citizenship means you don't get to vote. You don't get to vote in local elections. You don't get to vote in federal elections. You should not be allowed to vote if you are under this program, an illegal immigrant who has come to this country illegally, obviously, because that crime, we're giving you some grace here. The federal government has no responsibility to do this. The only responsibility the federal government has is to the American people, the citizens and voters of this country, to get these people out of the country because they did not come through via the legal pathways. All right. And of course, along with that is they're ineligible to hold any office in government, elected or otherwise. So you can't run for office and you can't be a bureaucrat that's hired by an administration or agency or anything of that nature. Okay. Those three are key. Those 3 points are key. Without that, screw the rest of it. Okay. Because that's just amnesty. Now, what I think would happen is a lot of illegal immigrants wouldn't even register for this program, subjecting them to immediate deportation, regardless of what their regardless of what their status is in relation to other criminal offenses, regardless of what their situation is regarding to welfare, regardless of their situation in their community. Okay, I know one of the big problems people have with immigration enforcement is some of these people have lived in their communities for many, many years. Okay, so they've to some extent integrated in their local communities, and people don't like seeing their friends and neighbors being thrown out of the country simply because they're not here legally. But let's be honest here. The federal government has a responsibility to uphold the law and every single law, regardless of whether the administration in power likes it or not. Okay? If you want to change the law, then change the law. But I guarantee you that's going to be very difficult because there's very good reason for immigration law as it exists now. Every sovereign country has the right and duty to its own citizens to protect their borders, to know who is coming into the country. And I think it goes without saying that without we see what happens when that isn't the case. We see what happens when the federal government turns a blind eye to illegal immigration. People have said that illegal immigrants cause per capita less crime than native born citizens, regardless of whether that's true or not, and regardless of the fact that they're a criminal already, considering they crossed the border illegally. Um, those crimes should not have been committed in the first place because they shouldn't be here in the first place. Okay, that's the problem. Now, I think the left in general, whether it's Chuck Schumer and the moderate moderate Democratic Party, calling him a moderate is perhaps generous, but I mean he forms pretty much the most moderate wing of the Democratic Party as it exists today, which says a lot about how far the Democratic Party has shifted to the almost anarcho-communist left. Okay, you see people like Mayor Jacob Fry and Governor Tim Walz, hopefully to be soon to be ex-Governor Tim Walz. Um, and where they stand on these issues, and you think, where the heck did you go wrong? Like, I wish for the days of the early 2000s when we were, not having this debate, or for the Bill Clinton years where everyone agreed illegal immigration, almost everyone agreed illegal immigration was a problem, when the Democratic Party was for a border wall, or at least some of the Democratic Party were. It just goes to show how far the conversation has shifted it, over this issue and other issues. I'm not going to get into the other issues. I'm going to keep this on topic, but you live in the moment, right? You live in today's moment. And if you don't recognize how the moment has changed, how politicians and just the conversation has shifted, right? You think, oh, the Republican Party is so radically right wing, and just because they want to get rid of illegal immigrants from this country, and oh my God. And you see the manifestation of that in all of these people out there protesting, peacefully or otherwise, and there's quite a bit of the otherwise in Minneapolis and elsewhere. I mean, I just saw a video of some protester, a 21-year-old man, although I assume he's a man. I'm not sure, unfortunately, but getting shot in the face with a pepper ball by ICE because he was lunging towards ICE agents that were or law enforcement. I'm not even sure if they were ICE agents, but they were protecting a federal building, and you have these protesters that are being aggressive, and a couple of them, including this one guy, lunges towards these officers, and he gets shot in the face. Not sure if it was intentional or not. Doesn't really matter. And he gets blinded in one eye as a result of his own stupidity, unfortunately. And I mean, the same could be said about Renee Good. What happened to her was a result of her own stupidity. And I don't mean to denigrate people that are getting injured in some of these demonstrations, these protests, but their actions, they're responsible for their own actions, and they're responsible for the consequences to their own actions. And if you don't realize like the situation you're putting yourself and others in, yeah, you're going to get hurt, because you're creating a situation where uh, you know It becomes dangerous, and we see that countless times. I don't need to go into the details of every example of where protest devolves into chaos, it devolves into violence, devolves into obstructing legitimate federal operations, devolves into attempts to occupy federal buildings or create autonomous zones, which is, by the way, by definition, insurrection or rebellion. Okay? But the narrative obviously has shifted because wouldn't see this 20, 25, 30 years ago. And it's a big problem because what fuels people who do this is one of two things: raw emotion that is ignorant, and I mean that in a literal sense. It is ignorant of facts, it is unknowing of facts, unknowing of the reality, the objective truth. Okay? Objectively, ICE is not the Gestapo. Objectively, ICE is doing its job. Okay? Saying otherwise, you're ignorant. Okay? One of the interesting things was there was a second shooting in Minneapolis. Again, but this time it was in ICE. The person that was attacked, this ICE clearly attacked the ICE agent with, I believe, a shovel, and was shot in the leg, I believe. But they're still protesting that, even though the guy clearly attacks this ICE agent. So they're still protesting that. It's like, where's your sense of reality? And this ties into a subject I want to talk about in detail at a later time. But the reality of objective truth, that there is such a thing, and that what is subjective is your perception, and perception and truth are two completely different things. Okay? If you're one of these people that say, my truth is, take a step back and realize that's a nonsensical claim. That's a nonsensical statement. Say, my perception is. But anyway, I digress. And be very good about going off topic, going down tangents. I think that my proposal, with some adjustments, obviously it's a short, concise proposal that needs to be expanded upon and details need to be filled in, but I think it's worth looking at. Okay, it's worth looking at. It will add to the legitimacy of deportations. Not that there really needs to be any more added legitimacy because there's the law right there. Okay, it will make this issue fall into a standard procedure rather than having maybe the chaos that some have claimed ICE is creating. Okay, of course, ICE isn't really creating it. It's sanctuary cities, non partnership with local law enforcement, state law enforcement in sanctuary cities and states that create situations like what's happening in Minneapolis, what's happened in Los Angeles, and elsewhere. But again, I don't think the left is even going to go for this because their motives have nothing to do with the people themselves. Their motives are purely I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of people that are protesting and a lot on the left, their motives are purely, I would say, ideological rather than humanitarian. They don't really care about the illegal immigrant themselves as a person. They care about attacking Trump. They care about attacking the right. They care about attacking the Republican Party. They care about political power. They care about their They care about their identity in so much as they've inculcated this ideological socialist Marxist anti-American ideology into their very being. There's a reason why a lot of these protesters out there are what's the word, countercultural. They're seemingly countercultural. Guys with painted fingernails, and um, you know what I'm getting at. I'm not going to, personally attack anyone that is of that nature. That's not the point of this. But you see how there's an element of identity in this that need not be the case. You are your own self, and your beliefs are a part of who you are, not who you are, right? And I think a lot of this is one of the biggest problems is the Republican Party and conservatives generally don't address things this deeply. And I want to start working on addressing these issues from a deeper perspective, because without that, there's no hope. Because identity is almost an addiction, right? You start incorporating things into your identity of yourself, okay? You're never going to accept an objective reality that counters the narrative of you as yourself, okay? And that's the problem that conservatives, that the Republican Party faces in addressing this and other issues, and why we continue to face a problem in elections when you have a lot of young people who show up to vote, notwithstanding the fact that Trump did get the young male vote in the last election. But there again, identity played a role. And without addressing these concerns, without addressing these issues, we got no hope. So I would uh, challenge anyone who watches this to, when you're having discussions about these issues, think about that aspect of it, how this is part of, in some ways, someone's identity, and to challenge that identity without challenging them, without, in a way that helps to separate their views, their ideology, from them as a person. Okay, because that's how we win. We win by making these arguments in a way that the opposition, those that we appeal to, can understand. And honestly, we have to appeal more to than to just consistent Republican voters that, well, not consistent, but generally right of center voters who are inconsistent in their voting habits, which is another issue, and one I will address later on, especially as we get closer to the election. Speaking of which, as I finish up, I will cover a lot more political material in the future. As of right now, you're what, 8-9 months out from the next election, but it's a huge election. It's a midterm, and it's going to decide, whether the House starts voting to impeach President Trump over bullcrap, or the Republicans maintain control of the House. So I'll address things related to more political issues and domestic issues as we go on. I appreciate anyone listening to this. Please comment, like, but especially share. I want to broaden out the people that see these videos, because I think that what I have to say is important, and it can speak to some people, and it can address some of the concerns that people might have on the right or on the left. my goal is to kind of bring people together in some way while acknowledging the largely the objective truth of conservatism. But as we go forward, we'll see how this expands if it does. I appreciate you listening. Have a good night.